There we go. All right. Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. In today's show, we have the man, the myth, the legend. You've seen him out there in the 2024 crit race season, hopping on podiums. You've seen him on Instagram. This guy is a legend in his own right. So let's give a warm welcome of applause. I know you can't do it across the your screen, but just do it at home. But let's give a huge shout out to Lucas Bourgoyne, and he's going to tell me how to properly pronounce his last name.
That was what's up, guys. No, that was actually spot on. That was Lucas Bourgoyne. That's how you say it. So, yeah, not bad for your first go around. I've heard Bourgeois, Bourgogne, Bourgogne, Bourgogne. You just keep on rolling with it. That's pretty bad at all.
I'm gonna give a shout out to Will Harden because whenever he does his race breakdown videos, he can't do a breakdown video without mentioning your name. So
He's
shout
the
out
one
to
who
Will
got it
Harden.
unlocked. Yeah, I think he's asked me that question too. He's like, "Hey, I'm about to do an edit, bro. How do you say your last name? Can you send me an audio clipping real quick?"
Exactly. Yeah. So for this show, guys, our intentions is to get to know Lucas a little bit more. Of course, we're going to talk about some of his racing, what the cycling scene is like in Austin, and just kind of what his overall at a high level plans are moving forward. And I also want to, and let's actually get into it right now. First, Lucas, tell me about this crit shite Instagram account you
Crit.
have.
Oh man. Oh no, that was it's yeah, crit shit. It was the birth of me and Luke being at races, and we were like after races we have some pretty good conversations, and we've sat around in hotel rooms and just talk the crit shit basically. And one day I was like, dude, what if we just recorded this? Because I'm not gonna lie, some of it's kind of funny, and like we had people around us that would come in and sit in on our like little post race conversations, and they're cracking up, and we're like, man, we might as well put a camera on it, try to do something fun, a little bit different, and just say what we think, and it kind of burst from there. We're still trying to figure out where we want to go with it and everything, and so that still remains to be seen. But for now, it's Luke and Lucas's post race thoughts on repeat. So the anger, the rage, the happiness, the sorrow, all of it in one.
Yeah, I really like what you guys are doing with that because as someone who's gotten into cycling during the pandemic, and just coming from
Mm,
other sports in my background, it's nice to see like the personality aspect of it. I wouldn't go as far as to say that like cycling is void of personality because of course that's untrue, but sometimes I
right.
think we get lost in just the competitive nature that we don't always get any insight on what these athletes are actually like and what their personality is like unless you were to engage with them face to face.
Right,
So
right.
it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. People get lost in the numbers too much nowadays. It's like at the end of the day, everyone's a human with a story and a different outlook on all of it. And I guess sometimes if you're willing to put yourself out there a little bit, it never hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start from the beginning here. So you're a Austin boy. Is that where you grew up?
I'm originally a Houston boy.
Houston.
Houston boy, born and raised. Yeah, yeah. So not too far. But I've lived in Austin. Austin's been my home base ever since I got out the house at 18. Moved out here to go to school and race bikes with my first team, Elevate Webbyplex or Elevate KHS, I think is what it was still at the time. And yeah, I've been here. This has always been home base for me since about 2019, and I would go to Europe and always come back here and whatnot. Set roots here pretty quick, I'd say.
So you mentioned you've spent time in Europe earlier on. Is that pretty typical for those who are really diving deep into the race world? Is that kind of what the younger folks do, like the juniors, U23?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you start, at least when I started, road was for juniors, road is the thing. There's not really so much of a junior crit league or anything like that per se, so it's not as much of a focus. And you're kind of just told from out the gate if you're going to ride a bike, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to do it, and this is where you're going to go. And so yeah, I went over there. I lived there for about 4 years, a host of different places. I lived in Girona, Nice, France, Locmene, a town of 3,000 people in northwestern France. Beautiful town, but just no man's land and farmland, right? And yeah, it's an experience I think every cyclist should have, and it definitely shaped me into the assets and the development I needed to, I guess, perform on the highest level now here in crit racing in America. So yeah, it's for sure a must, and it's a need, and yeah, I think there's a lot of great takeaways that I had from it as well.
It makes me wonder just how many other sports are there that would require an athlete to move out of the country for. Now, like for myself, coming from a basketball background, and
Hmm.
it's kind of changing now where it used to be, if you want to compete with the best, you got to come to the States. And I think that's
Right.
changing a little bit. Europe, particularly like France, they're really, really big now. I'm trying to think where else, maybe like Brazil, but I still think today you have to come to America to compete. But I wonder what other sports are out there because like for cycling, that seems to be like basically, yeah, you kind of have to go like to Belgium or some of these other smaller European cities
Right.
that you mentioned, yeah, I guess if you want to compete with the best, you got to go where the
Right.
competition is.
You gotta cut your teeth in Europe at some point, right? And yeah, I really don't know of any other sports because usually the U.S. I mean, when it comes to sports, I mean, it's the whatever sport they choose, it's the biggest sport, right? And so
Yeah.
cycling's unique in that aspect where it's one of those things where yeah, you kind of have to take off and find your way and see if it's for you, and maybe it's not for you. And for me, like, I'll never say never, but I think for the time being, I'm extremely happy where I'm at and what's happening and what's going on. And this was always kind of the dream for me to be able to, succeed at the highest level back in my home country, right? And that's brought me a lot of joy in these past few months and this year being with what it was. So I cannot complain, sir.
Yeah, you guys have been crushing it for 2024. So, um,
Mm,
grew up in Houston, moved overseas to get your weight up, so to speak, and then now take us
right.
to the last couple of years, as far as racing goes, and kind of where you've kind of landed when you got back to the States, and then kind of
Yeah.
where you were for this past season.
Yeah, so I was racing on in 2023. I started racing on a French outfit, and it wasn't exactly kind of what they had sold the bill to be, and it was a huge reason of why I decided to come back home and to the States and whatnot. Like I'm a sprinter, right? That's what you've probably seen in the crits, right? Like that's what I do, and I was over there racing basically equivalent of a world tour climber's schedule. And so I'm kind of like, what am I doing? Like this just sucks. This is not what I signed up for. And I ended up coming back to the States. I did like a huge what I call my I came back and I wanted to win Pro Crit that year. That was like my like eyes locked on. So I came home, did U23 Nationals, headed straight from U23 Nationals, drove like 10 hours from Roanoke,
Oh my
hit
goodness.
uh hit Dairylands, did 4 days of Dairylands, and it happened to be like four really massive, like big, like Dairylands has probably some of the biggest crowds in the country consecutively for like 11 days. So I did that, and I was like, dang, I mean, this is the racing I grew up with. I grew up racing races like Dairylands and stuff like that, which is really what got me like invigorated to ride a bike and pursue it further, right? And then to come back into that, do that race, get to do the 4 days and be like, holy shit, like this is how big bike races can be in the US, right? And then I took back off, did pro nationals. And then I was like, man, like, is there a way to stay here and do this? And I ended up walking mid season of 2023 onto the Austin Outlaws, and that's where I've been ever since. I was kind of brought in as the hometown boy. They were having a tough season getting off the ground. And I came in and I had some good results, nothing too crazy, but you got to knock on the door before it opens. And so that's what the end of 2023 was. It was a lot of top fives, top sevens, top threes, nothing quite sticking. And then 2024 hit and it started sticking a little bit. So,
Yeah.
you
Uh,
know?
Yeah, being now a spectator and a ride recreational rider myself, I'm been trying to do my best to recognize all the various names and athletes for American cycling, and so yeah, it's awesome to hear your story because I'm like where does this guy come from? It's just like one year
Yeah,
and I realized why I hadn't heard of you beforehand because you weren't around until middle of 2023. So
right, right,
it's nice to have so many big names now in the sport now where it's no longer just one specific team or one athlete. Now it's the love is being spread around.
right, right. Exactly. Yeah, it's the way it's
I,
supposed to
I,
be. Competition.
you have to answer this for me because again, since I'm new to this, um, what were the crowds like before the pandemic? Do you know, like, as far as American wise? Because to me, I'm like, oh man, like, we're in a great place right now. But then others would argue that maybe like 2010, 2012, there were even larger
Yeah.
crowds and support for these races.
To be honest with you, I don't know.
Okay.
I think, yeah, like I started in 2015, 2016. And I did a lot, like I said, like juniors is very focused on going to Europe. So it's a lot of road racing. And the crowds for road racing in America were never big.
Yeah.
Right. I'd done a few crits and I've asked like quite a bit of like the older guys and whatnot, what it was like Johnny Clark and stuff. Like he shredded this scene for almost probably 2 decades now, right? And his answer, and it'll be the one that I stick to because I trust him with everything. But he said that the crowds and the overall speed of the peloton has gotten like the crowds have gotten a little bit bigger and the speed of the peloton has gotten higher because of equipment standards, access to training knowledge, whatever. But you've seen a thing where like, I mean, I remember where in June we had a pretty good year this year, right? We won two stages of Dairylands, like got second at Gastown, and then some other big race we got second at. His brother was one of the best. Hilton Clark was one of the best sprinters for like I think 5 years, maybe more. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. And so he had a similar June that year, back in 2010 or whatever. And in that year, I think Johnny told me he had won a take home of $70,000 in a car. And
Wow.
in my month, I think maybe it was like under sub 10 or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, quite a bit. Like, I'm like, Johnny, what? I was like, if I made 70K in prize money in a year, I'd lose my freaking mind, bro. I'd be let's buy in. This is all I'm throwing all in right now. So it's definitely times are different. I definitely wish I had gotten to see the era where you could do that in cycling, and who knows, maybe that era is still coming if we keep building and growing and the crowds keep increasing and whatnot. But we're in a good. I think it's in a good spot, like viewership wise, and right now with people trying to expand into like you got Ron Short doing the drone footage, which has never been done before. I think that's going to open up a whole new level. That you got Ron Short on the East Coast doing all those drone footage. On the West Coast, you've got what is it, LA Crits doing all their drone footage shots, and now Tolly at the driveways trying to bring it to Texas, which is kind of that big midsection of the U.S. that gets uncovered. And if we bring all that together, who knows? Because those things really like tie it in and make it exciting. Where if we could watch that on a live stream or something like that, your favorite players with little pop, that's like other big
Yeah.
sports and stuff, right? Like so, it's bridging that gap slowly but surely, and maybe we'll see. We'll have a return to the great days, the glory days of 2010. But for now, I'm just enjoying where we're at.
Yeah, my local club, Triple X Athletico, we were
Mm-hmm.
responsible for the final stage of uh Chicago Grit, formerly Intelligentsia, the
Yeah,
Fulton Street. And as
hell
you
of a
noticed,
stage.
they moved locations to obviously try to bring in more commerce, bring in more eyes, being close to the SRAM
Right.
headquarters, all that stuff. And the guy who's organizing it, arranging it, on our squad. His name is James Jim. He's a fantastic guy. He's super strong, and he sacrificed a
Yeah.
lot of time to bring in funds for that stage. And so they want to try to make that stage next year an ACC. So that there'll actually be two.
Hell
There'll
yeah.
be Lake Bluff and then that
Yep.
one as well. And so, I think that's his long-term vision is basically what you said is we want to get more eyes in there and make it more exciting. I mean, like the crowds that day was incredible. And it's just like, hey, just hang out, have a beer, even if you don't fully
Yep.
follow what's happening. It's like, yo, just hang out. It's summertime shy. We only get like 4 months of this.
Right.
So just
Right. Right.
enjoy it.
From the racer's perspective, hats off to him. That was probably one of my favorite courses of the year. It was absolutely incredible to like you would get all the people rallied on the home stretch, and it was lying deep all the way from that first corner to probably about 200-300 meters back, and then you turn right, and then there'd be a rail car coming over the top of you, so you're deaf on the back side of the course, and you're just like some guys were like, "Oh, this is so scary." I'm like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever. This is the coolest bike race I've ever done."
It's
Having a train go over the top of you that you're racing alongside, trying to beat to the next corner before you take off. It was hats off to him and the club because that was pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll let them know. It was such a surreal feeling just, pulling up. I think I pulled up maybe halfway through the pro race, and it's just like, man, like everything you said, I'm like, man, this is like the most Chicago bike racing thing I've ever seen. And,
Yeah,
just a culmination
yeah,
of like all good things.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's see. So I have a couple of questions, but I'll start with this one. So take me through the life of a pro racer during the season. What's that like? And obviously for yourself, it's probably a little bit different since just the resources you probably have access to as opposed to maybe another squad that probably has to work like a full-time job. So
Right, right.
what's it like for someone for yourself?
Yeah, man. We have a particularly unique situation in and of the fact that Luke and I we're young. I think this season Luke was 19 and I was, 22 going on 23. So Luke was 18 going on 19 and I was 22 going on 23, right? So definitely a much lower age than you see in the crit league a lot now, right? And so we had more ability, more flexibility to stay on the road. And so for us, I think I calculated like we were, season really starts now beginning of April-ish time. I would say season started for us with like a preseason is all my local kind of Texas stuff happening in February and March. And then race season legit starts beginning of April. And we kicked it off with Marietta straight into Redlands and then on to all the USA crit stuff. So it goes from about April to September. So you got 6 months in there. You got roughly about 180, 190 days on the road where it ends at I would say the end is Bucks County. And so out of about 190 days, we were on the road for about 160 of them
Wow.
because we wanted like we're young. We wanted to do the only way to gain knowledge and to be successful long term in this sport is to get everywhere and race as much as you can at this age because this is the time that you have to learn, right? Like all these great crit racers you see now, like the Ty Magners, the Justin Williamses, the Brian Gomez's, Alfredo. They've seen these courses five, six, seven, like times like they've done where they've been on teams with bigger budgets back in the day where you were able to they were funding 50 60 crit race day
Wow.
calendared race days, right? So like they're everywhere, they've seen everything, and that's why now they're so they're guys might get out, a team might roster in at 20 or 30 race days. Well, in 3 years, they've got 180 race days, and in 3 years, you've got 60. Who's going to win the bike race at the end of the day, right? The guy who's beaten the craft, 3x the time, right? And so we've really taken that mantra and ran with it this season. And we did, I think I raced like 85 times this season, 90 times. But I like racing. I like
Yeah.
racing. I like once
Clearly.
once off season's done and I don't have to train it. Yeah, like we were racing like on average, I think every other day during that season block, right? Like we
Yeah.
would we would be like, "Hey Luke, you want to go train today?" And he's like, "I heard there's a local crit in Colorado that we can go to." And I was like, all right, let's go to the race. Let's go to the race and do our intervals attacking off the front. And he's like, bet I'm in. And like, yeah, it was an absolute blast and a pleasure to be able to have the flexibility and the time to do something like that. And I think we plan to complete a similar schedule because in a year or two, it's going to pay off in us knowing everything that we can, not everything. We'll still be absorbing and learning until we're hopefully doing this at 30, but it'll pay mega dividends. And I think it'll launch us to where we want to be within the next year is hopefully, being able to vie and claim top spot on the crit league and whatnot.
Yeah. I've completely underestimated how expensive entrance fees can be. So for the elite squad on my club, part of being on
Right.
the elite squad, of course, is that the team will pay for your entrance fees. And I was like, and
Mhm.
initially I was like, oh, well, I mean that's these guys work full-time jobs. They could just pay for themselves. But then I realized like
Right.
you know, you can easily spend, they're probably spending $2,000 per athlete and they're probably doing maybe 20 races a year. So for yourself, I mean,
Right.
that's a huge undertaking for just the entrance fees, right? Not including
Right.
equipment, kit, anything else.
Right.
So, I mean, you're
Right.
looking at what, probably 10 grand or so, give or take.
That is something I will tell you that changed quite a bit post pandemic. Entrance fees did not used to be this expensive.
Really?
I don't know what happened. They are still expensive. Don't get me wrong, but like a big national level crit used to be $40 to $55, and now it's $75 to $95, and it's like they're like why are registration going down, and it's like, well, dude, like the entrance fee doubled at this point, and I know they got promoters got to meet their needs and whatnot, and so and promoters have a very much thankless job, but I don't know what we could do to help them to where we can bring it, because that I think it definitely like we're lucky, like now we had to buy a lot of our own entrance fees to like races this year, but I think with the shtick and the camaraderie and the platform we're starting to be able to build now, races are very excited to have us there because we highlight them in our stuff. And so hopefully this year entrance fees will be fully comped and taken care of is what it sounds like. Is
Yeah.
what I'm working on, because yeah, I mean that shores up like 5 to 10 grand in a budget right there. And so like you gotta plan for those things. Luckily we had such a good season last year that we were like, we made all our money back and a nice chunk on top, so like we're good. But like still, you go there. That's why we went to the first day of Dairylands, and I was like, we were stressed because we had spent like $1,200 in entrance fees.
Oh
And
my
so I was like,
goodness.
Luke's like, damn, bro, we got to make our entrance fee back. Like, da, 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 da. And so I was like, hey, bro, I got you. $1,000 preem, first preem, done. $500 preem, done. We made like 3 grand in the first day of Dairylands. I was like, now we didn't race for the win. We raced for money. And I was like, now we can race for the win. So and then the next day we won the race. And so I was like, all right, this is how this is tipped, right? And so
I'm,
um
I'm
yeah,
totally
yeah, it's
showing my
crazy.
age here, but I remember back in the day, you used to be able to go to the club. It'd be like maybe $5 to get in the club, and then
Right.
women get in free. And now it's like, bro, it's like $40. You got to get bottle service, and it's like I can't, I mean I'm
Yeah.
married, so I don't go anyway. But I'm like I can't
Yeah.
afford this. What they're gonna start doing now for these promoters for these crits,
Yeah.
they're gonna start putting both you guys' faces on the on the flyer and
Yep.
be like,
Yeah.
hey, let
Yeah.
us get in for free, but in turn
Yeah.
we're gonna use you as promo.
Hey, that's totally fine. We get our entry fee comp. We get a little bit extra. We are more. That's the cool thing after a successful season. Going back to these, I was making my calendar this year, which is going to be roughly similar. Maybe a few extra cool race dates than we missed last year. Like Cascade Cycling Crit was a big one. We want to go back and do. They had huge money at that. A couple other, maybe Hyde Park Blast or something like that. Seems like a cool one we missed. But going back and looking at all these races and seeing all the different ones where we now have pictures on the front, me and Luke, because we had a good go at that race and whatnot. So it's exciting to see the hard work is paying off slowly but surely.
Awesome. So I want to ask you next just what the cycling scene is like in like Houston, Austin. And before you answer, I'll just kind of explain a little bit what it's like here in Chicago. At least, yeah,
Mm,
Chicago proper. So for the most part, the majority of the clubs, the teams, we all basically travel north outside the city. So basically, as far as like Lake Bluff courses, that's kind of like maybe
right,
where people will go far. There might be like maybe 50, 60 miles round trip. And because there's only a handful of roads to take that are really good with a lot that don't have a lot of traffic lights, you'll basically see all the clubs. And so like our main elite team here, 606 Racing, I'm sure you've competed with
Mm,
a few of them. What's interesting with them is,
yes,
they'll do their own thing, but you can always see them out on the road and you can always say hi, you can chat with them. So they're not fully like separate from just regular mammals like myself. What's it like
right,
for yourself? Obviously, last year being different because you're probably gone half the year, but
right,
what's the
right.
cycling scene like in Austin slash Houston?
It's Houston. There's a reason you move out of Houston and go to, and I went to Austin, right? Austin and Austin, Houston is very much probably like Chicago.
Shout out to the
I
Breakfast
mean, I
Club.
would do shout out to the Breakfast Club. We love them. Grant Preston, all my boys. Houston's probably very much like Chicago. Actually, not probably. It's very much like Chicago. It's just a major metropolitan city. I mean, I try to do a 5 hour ride. I lived like inner city, and so it's 2 hours of stop and go.
Man,
Shit
yeah.
lights all the way for 1 hour of great riding. 2 hours back through the shit, right? And so when I was 18, I was like, if I want to level up my game, I got to get to a place that I can ride freely a lot more. Insert Austin, Texas. It's a reason over the years it's had so many, pros come through here and whatnot. You got Lawson. Lawson moved from Houston here. You had Nate Brown here for a while, Gavin Mannion, Johnny Brown, Kevin Gherkins, Colin Strickland, Michael. This list goes on of great U.S. cyclists that have come through. Lance, that have come through this city, and it's a big city with small city access, right? And so like you have Austin's really developed north and south, but really not developed east and west. So if
Mm,
I want to get out of the city, I'm dead center of the city, 15 minutes either way, and I'm pretty much to where I don't have to stop pedaling for a light
that's
ever again,
crazy.
right? Um, yeah, it's really and it's you were saying it's going to be 20 tomorrow. It's going to be 80 tomorrow. So,
Dang, man.
and
I'm in
it's
the wrong city, bro.
December. You're in the wrong city. It's been 80 this whole. It's been 50 to 80 degrees this last month. But it's a beautiful place to ride, and Austin's got a very rich cycling culture, and like things like the Breakfast Club form, which is awesome to see a huge social club of it's not race, it's predominantly not racers, right? It's just people who like to ride and like the aesthetic of cycling and enjoy the camaraderie and then getting breakfast after a ride, right? And then there's a huge racing scene here. I mean, Austin is I'm shocked more bike companies haven't tried to push the Austin market yet. I know some are, but Austin really has the biggest social ride scene, I would say, and the biggest race scene, like weekly race, biggest monthly social ride scene and biggest weekly race scene. Having the Breakfast Club, having drive. I mean, you have 1,000 people show up to the Breakfast Club on a monthly group ride. You have, you know, 500 racers a week show up to the driveway to do the driveway and
I heard
whatnot. I mean,
about
that's
that series. Yeah.
incredible. Yeah, the driveway series. I mean, it's been the biggest. It's been the most attended cycling event for years on years on years on years, right? And so, I mean, you got the biggest social scene of cyclists. You got the biggest race scene of cyclists. And then for a quick second here, we had a professional team representing the city as well. And so I was like, you got the holy triad right there of making a great. All those things feed off each other very well, all right. And so it's like if you had someone come in, they could really do something special, I think, in this marketplace. And maybe that's us. Maybe it's us. Who knows?
Could be. Yeah. You guys could be the
Could
ones,
be.
spearheading it, right?
Exactly, exactly. So slowly but surely, I've done some events with Breakfast Club, and then I obviously do some stuff with the driveway with Tolly. So who knows? Maybe we'll one day connect to the triad and make it, and then exalt Austin to the highest of the cycling scenes.
That's gonna be the
But
thumbnail. It's gonna be you doing that. It's gonna be
yes.
the
Ah!
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see. Okay, so we have 6 minutes left. So if we go over, I'll just restart the meeting. So I have just a
Yeah.
few more
Absolutely.
questions, and then we're Gucci. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so uh, talk me through your happiest or greatest moment from this past season. It could be just either a podium or just maybe just something happened where you're like, man, this is like a fantastic moment right now,
Um.
or at least one of them.
Yeah. I would say. I would say. have two things that come up immediately when you say that. A particular moment is Easton Twilight. That was when we cracked the seal of winning. That's when like everything cascaded after that. And it was particularly cool because before the race, I'd had a conversation with Johnny Clark, and I'd been Luke had been sick at Speed Week and crashed. I had been sick at Speed Week and crashed. We had a couple other races. We had like glimpses of good performances, but then it wasn't really consistent coming through. And I was like, Johnny, I just don't get it. Like, I'm very clearly like good enough to be here, and I have the power to win, but I just can't get into the trains. Like, I can't get inside of the line that I need to be in the position to sprint. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Is this going on YouTube? Do we can we curse or
You're good,
what's
man. Yeah, yeah, no worries.
the
Yeah, it's all good.
I'm good? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay." He's like, I mean, I've already said shit like five times, but he's like, oi, oi, cunt, because he's Australian. I'm like, very Australian way. He's like, oi, cunt. He's like, one rule remains true. If you fucking win the race, they can't say shit. And I was like, so do what you need to. And I was like, all right, Johnny, it's about an hour for a race. All right, Johnny, I'm going crazy in the second to last corner. I got this. And so we go and it's a pissing rain crit. And we come out on top. And me and Luke had been like trying to gel. And then it just like that, just instantly gels. Johnny held our position at the front. Luke protected my wheel the whole time. We just Luke and both of them dropped me off with about a lap and a half to go. I cut in the middle of, I think it was like Legion and Blazers were kind of vying for the front. I hop in the middle of that, split the train, and then I almost crash in the last corner going under. I like pedaled too early. It slid kicked, and I'm like, I went from like second wheel coming to the last corner, like, I'm gonna win. This is it. Hell yeah. To I'm gonna crash. And then I stood up and I was like, time to cook, bro. And then there's an overhead video of me just hawking down a couple of my boys and and then we're just after the line. Me and Luke are just in each other's face, grabbing each other's helmet shots, like ah! And that was that was a pretty special moment. And then overview of it all, it was all the times after races sitting on. It was the crit ship moments that we ended up started recording where we would just sit there and we would talk about the race, and it would either be a good day or a bad day. But at the end, I'm just sitting there with my boy, and we're just like, damn, bro, what did we do wrong? Or damn, bro, that was crazy. Damn, bro, did you see that guy's face go into that metal barrier at 40 miles an hour? Whoa. Those were particularly, that was one of my favorite parts of the season, was just getting done with everything and then just being like, and just getting to talk about it and just getting to be like, oh, we're the best. We're on cloud nine. Or damn, bro, we kind of suck today. Like, what are we gonna do about it tomorrow? you know,
You said what are we gonna
you
do
know,
about it
and
tomorrow? We got
we got a
79
75
more races to do this season.
yeah. So I said we can forget this one, I guess, but yeah, that was pretty bad. Though that was a little. He's like, "Damn, I know, dog." And then we go out win the next one and be like, "Oh no,
Yeah, there we
we're
go.
sick, we're the best." But yeah,
Yeah, I love the
that was
confidence.
yeah. Hey, you gotta believe it before you achieve it, right? And so that's a big, we always walk into the races. People can think whatever they want. We walk around, we saunter, we got the freaking, the walk, try to talk it too, but it's like if you ain't believe it before it happens, right? It ain't gonna
Yeah.
happen. And so you gotta walk the talk, and then hopefully you can back it up. Because if you can't, then people are gonna shit on you. But
Yeah.
we didn't we didn't quite get there. So
All right, Mr. Lucas, let's talk about bikes for a second. Now, at this point, I'm sure you've ridden a lot of
absolutely.
different bikes from Europe, then back to where you're in the stateside. So what are some of your favorite bikes? What have you been riding for the 2024 season?
For the 2024 season, I have been riding the newly released Tavelo Aero, and it is one hell of a rocket ship. No, it was crazy, kind of how that all came about. I remember hitting George up. He was actually, it's crazy. This story actually runs deep. I was riding with Michael Garrison, who was down in Austin at the time, and our team didn't have a bike. It was about January, and our team didn't have a bike sponsor for the year. And so I was like, "Oh man, what are we gonna do?" Da 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 da. And I said, "Okay, nope." Like, and I was talking to Michael, and Michael's like, "Yo, you should hit up my buddy George. I'll send you his contact information over." And he's connected in with another big like Chinese box brand bike company, right? And I was like, okay, like I'll hit him up. He's like, if he can do anything, he'll definitely help you. He's got me set. Like I think George set him up with the wheel company that Michael's now racing for the last 2 years, and so I was like, so I texted George. I was like, hey man, like it's January. I know it's so late, but like if you can get anything from them and they'd be happy to send like just sponsor it over, like that would be incredible. And he's like, let me see what I had a long conversation with him. We got along real well, and he's like, let me cook, I'll get back to you. He comes back to me in a week, and he's like, hey man, well they balked, but funny enough, I got another buddy in the industry, insert Tavelo, and Declan. And he says, I told Declan your story, and he absolutely loves it, and he wants to support you. And it's this like Chinese bike company, right? And it's like, comes out, and I don't know if you know much about this, but like China, like Taiwan, at least from my understanding, this could also be wrong, but Taiwan is like the leading manufacturer of a lot of the top bikes, right? China is coming up, but they're not quite at the quality standard of that manufacturing, right? And so, like you can get really good stuff, or it's a little bit more hit or miss, right? So I remember talking to George. I was like, oh no, man, like am I like am I gonna break this bike? Like I was like, I can do 1,800 watts. Like I don't want to snap through this in the middle, like mid sprint, 40 miles an hour and die. And he's like, no, no, dude, like trust me, like this is going to be an absolute rocket ship. It's a hell of a bike. Like I know, I trust this guy with my life. Like he's not gonna, he's not. And sure enough, like it is my favorite bike I've ever ridden, hands down. And I've ridden a lot of other brands, like you said. It's a 14 and a half pound aero racing bike that corners and handles like an absolute knife through the wind, right? And so for a sprinter, I mean, yeah, you right now you're kind of where bikes are starting to get lighter, but you're now in the day and age of like you either get an air, you're still in the day and age of you get an aero bike and it's heavy, or you get a climber bike and it's not really aero, and everyone wants aero nowadays. And then you get these like mash bikes where it's like one bike to rule them all, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
it's like, hey, whatever, man, this thing's a weapon. And so to have a 14 and a half pound tricked out racing bike that rips the wind, like is extraordinarily aero in my opinion. I mean, I can't thank them enough for believing in me this season and giving me the opportunity, and adding to what I think was the pizzazz of the whole season, getting pink bikes. And like after we got the black one, and Declan saw what we were doing, he's like, this is so cool. And I was like, hey, can I get a second one? And he's like, what are you thinking? And I was like, what's the craziest color you got? And he's like, pink. And I was like, that sounds nice.
It's
That
like the most
sounds like a
recognizable bike in the peloton for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've never gotten complimented on my bikes in my entire life, because all the bike brands are about sleek and cool and got to be black. And the new thing now is everyone's got an earth tone, and it's like, nah, bro. Like if you like if you do it right, which Tavello did it very right, and we have this beautiful like pink purple fade into each other. Like it's a really cool bike, and I've never been complimented on my bike before. And I kid you not, I've had 50 people walk up to me, and it's people that aren't even cyclists. Like I have little girls come up, when I'm at a gas station shop, and they're like, "Oh my God, I love your bike. It's so pretty." Like I have like moms come up, mom's favorite crit racer. No, just kidding. But you moms come up like, your bike's so cool. Got racers in the peloton who are like, they all they've seen are black bikes the last 10 years, because that's what everyone wants, is a black or a like black green bike. And it's like It's like, and they're like, man, it's really cool. You pop. My parents are like, we can feed you anytime now because we know where y'all are because we just look for the neon bikes and the Peloton, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Cool. I
man,
think I
it
got it.
was it was one of you good,
Good.
good, okay. Oh, look at that.
What the heck is
Boom.
bro? What's yo,
Whoa.
what do we do? We're tripping on acid. All
That's
right.
crazy. Exactly. But no, it was truly one of those years where the stars aligned just right. Everything from meeting George just at the right time, Declan coming in and buying in on the vision, and me telling him like I didn't have any wins to my name in the crit league. I'd had some great European results and whatnot, but I didn't have any wins. And it was like, hey, dude, I'm gonna win a lot of races this year. And he was like, all right, let's see it happen. And here's the tools you need to make it happen. And then just, I mean, I can't thank Tavelo enough. I can't recommend it enough to anyone looking for a top of the line bike for, half to a quarter of the price of box brand bikes. I mean, like I frequently say that I'm like, you can go get insert your top bike brand for 7 grand, 5 to 7 grand, or you can get 3.5 Tavelos frame and bars, and you can crash that thing out as many times as you want because you got three more sitting behind you, right? So it's like, like
Yeah.
it truly is an incredible bike, and it's one of my favorite bikes I've ever ridden, and I can't speak highly enough about them. And if you shall ever try it, I mean, if I'm not complaining doing, 1,800 watts on the thing, sure as hell shouldn't be anyone else complaining about it, right? So,
Yeah, I love that tagline. So, a couple of things on that point. So, number one is I'm gonna just flex right quick. So, I appreciate all my
yeah,
supporters, those who follow my channel. I've only had two moments where I went into super fanboy mode. One was when I met Legion a few years back, and then was when I met you
yeah,
this past summer at
I
Chicago Grit. And I remember you saying,
appreciate
"Hey,
it.
when I got this frame, I watched your videos," and I'm just like, "Oh
Yeah,
snap!" Like the pros, I just don't imagine them watching my YouTube. And I think what you said is a good point because, like, in the space I'm in, obviously, you have to kind of go into some of the nitty gritty stuff and some of the more, I guess, they're tangible things. But the reality is, they probably don't really matter to the person who's really riding their bike. So sometimes, we kind
mhm,
of we kind of trip over basically insignificant things. So from you, it's like,
right,
you're not geeking out over these smaller details. It's just, hey, does it work? Can I sprint on it? Am I going to break my collarbone? And I think there's something to be said about going into kind of understanding these bikes from that perspective, as opposed to whatever small things that someone might say or criticize about the bike, but maybe they're not really riding their bikes to the limits to really have such a
right,
strong opinion one way or another. So,
right, right. I mean,
yeah, so
yeah, yeah,
I appreciate the pros from that perspective where, hey, we're not tripping on those small details. We just need our stuff to work day in and day out.
right. A bike's a bike, and if it's doing its job, what are you going to complain about, right? It's doing its
Yeah.
job. It's going fast through the wind. It's stiff. It's light. I mean, tweak it to your spec, make it how you want it to be, and get going. If you're losing the race, it ain't because of some little minor inconvenience that you might have come up with in your head, right? And so no, man, I do remember watching your video. It was with the black and white original. What was that? It wasn't the Velo Arrow. It was the generation they had before.
Yeah, that's a fellow attack.
Um,
Yeah.
Attack. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I remember you doing the review on it, and you were like, "Yeah, I like this thing. It's really, really light." And I was like, "All right, I'm sold. It's light."
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it's a very well made video. And yeah, it's just yeah, I can't speak highly enough about them, and I hope to I wish them all the success and all the Palomars because I think they've put out an extremely quality product that you now see other brands popping off in America trying to copy, right? And so
yeah.
it says it when people start trying to copy what you're doing, you got something good going on. So
Yeah. Shout out to SKYA Sports. I believe he's also been working with some other local teams here in Chicago as well. So George at Sky Sports, yeah, he does great stuff. And it's comforting to have a US contact on this side of things because that's usually kind of one of the headaches or potential headaches dealing with the Chinese stuff is, you're having to try to speak to someone who English is not the first language. Are they using Google Translate to try to respond to your emails? So now it's like, look, George is the buffer for all these products, and he only is curating products that he would stand by himself for his racers.
Right.
So it's a huge game changer. So Lucas, as you round third base, what is some advice you have for those who want to get into competitive racing? And the reason I'm asking is because I met one of your buddies, Gabriel, also from Austin.
Mhm.
It was at the Northbrook circuit at Chicago Grid, and he said some things that I it still stuck with me to this day. And even though I don't really race like that, I still appreciate it. He was saying, one, he said people have a tendency to cat up too quickly, and two,
Mhm.
you have to practice winning. It's hard to
Right.
it's hard to do if you're catting up so quickly. So he said, perhaps stay in these lower categories longer so you actually learn what it's like to win and make the mistake. So, what would you say to that, and what's your advice for the younger folks getting into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Cycling is really a sport where you have to learn how to win first, and a lot of people lose sight of that. And because it's become so much easier in USA cycling to cat up now, um, people people always what my coaches through the times would do is you're not allowed to cat up until you can win a couple bike races in that category.
Mm,
And because if you can't win in the cat threes, how are you going to win in the cat twos? And if you can't win in the cat twos, how are you going to win in the cat ones? Right? Like it's a building blocks game because if you take yourself to the next step before you're even good enough to be the top in that step you were at, you're going to delay your development because now you're in a higher level category with stronger riders who now the pace is faster, so you're a little more cross-eyed. So now you're losing skill, and when you're losing skill, you're losing the race because everyone thinks this is a Zwift game where it's like, oh, if I have the biggest power numbers, I'm gonna win the race. And I frequently say this, like you could scrub 100 watts off my 20 minute at the driveway, and I'd still win the driveway because it's a game of skill. People
dang,
people forget that that's the thing I'd say for young guys, especially, is do not get lost in the numbers. If you're going to get lost in anything, get lost in the skill of how you ride your bikes and the tactics and why you corner this way and why you move your weight that way and why you lean on this guy to create space before you dive. Like all those little things that cycling just doesn't teach you as much nowadays. Like I don't know if you know this, but personally, like I'm a cycling coach. It's one of the things that I do to make this all work and whatnot. And my big focus is my guys are committed, right? They want to do well, so I know they're going to do the workouts. I don't have to stress about that. What I want to stress to them is it's not about power. You can get a Cat 4 that has a 380-watt 20 minute that will never win a bike race in the Cat 4s because he didn't learn the skill of how you move through the peloton to win a bike race, right? And so that's why you see so many of these a lot of these top racers that are winning these big crits, they're not particularly the most powerful rider, right? Like they're or like the strong no by no like a take a Justin Williams for an example, right? Like power 20 minute wise, like he's probably not in the top 50 guys in the race, right? But he can get to the end of the race so fresh from skill of knowing how to maneuver through the peloton that he still's got his 2000-watt kick. So like what are you gonna do at that point?
yeah.
And that's something I've really taken into heart this year in crit racing is it's just all a flow state. It's all about finding that flow. And the best advice I could ever give anyone if you're doing crit racing comes from Connor Sally. Um, he was sitting down at the table with me one day and we're talking and shooting the shit with our director Johnny Clark and they're talking and jawing off at each other and Connor's like, if you're hitting your brakes in the bike race, you fucked up. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like you got to hit your brakes. Like what do you? You're gonna run into the. He's like, no, bro, you messed up. You didn't take the corner. You didn't back off properly to run the speed into the
Mm.
corner. Like every time you touch your brakes, you're causing a deceleration, and every time you decelerate, you then have to accelerate, which is another match of energy, another kilojoule extra, another right. But if you can keep your momentum flowing the whole time, that's why Luke and I sit at the back and oh, now it's time to race. Okay, 10 minutes to go. Hey, we got to go to the front, bro. All right, let's cook. Right? Like it's a it's a skill and a tactics game, and different people's for different riders, tactics will be different. But the one thing that remains the same is you have to have the skill, and that comes from doing bumping drills, taking corners at speed with someone leaned over you, getting on the back of a moto. I get on the a big thing in my training with Gabe this season, Gabe Porterfield, who we were just talking about, is we get my dad on the moto. And I did it a lot with Gabe, and I did it a lot with Greg Vanderpool. I do it with anyone actually who I trusted and would teach how to do it. But we get on the back of the moto, we take it up to 35 miles an hour, and then I'd give them this moto, and then I'd come and try to take it from them. And I would just like bar check them, head check them,
Holy.
elbow check them, so that when you get into the race, that's what's happening, right? That's what's happening. Us sprinters, like that's what's in the finale of the last two laps. That's all that's happening is a bar check, a slide here, a move with the hip, right? And so if you can get in that mindset where you've done it, it's the same thing as why you race so much, because if you've done it 100 times, the 101st isn't that crazy. But if you've done it 10 times, the 11th is pretty freaking crazy because you're like, but like if I could simulate that, I wasn't, and by the end of the season, you could just see it. If I was on one of my good days, there was just, I could just la 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 come in under rainstorm, chop their train. Like you probably saw me at the last day of Chicago Grid. I was inside rainstorm's train coming into one to go. And
Yeah.
it's like you don't get inside rainstorm's train. That just doesn't happen. They're
Yeah.
all suicidal. They'll all kill you if you get inside your train, right? And I'm just in there like I'm in there, and I look back and I see Luke like four wheels back behind their train. He's like, bro, that's crazy. I don't know how you did. And it's just la 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 slice. And it's just like that's because of that confidence and that skill and that willingness to I'm executing on my workout, so my power is going to be there. But I really, really focused on my skill this year, which is what took my game to a different level because no one in cycling teaches that. No one. And this year is like, Johnny's telling me why I push this way to go that way. Ty's telling me why I got to create space here to dive this way, right? Like how you move. And all those things just add until you get a different understanding of how crit racing is working. And that's why those top 10 guys you see top 10 all the time, that's the difference. That's the difference between the person at the like trying to bum rush in the middle of the field, sprinting, brake checking, causing chaos in his own mind, sprinting out of the corner, and then dive bombing the next corner, losing all his speed, having to do 900 watts again. Then he's just done 900 watts out of every corner for the last 20 minutes. So now he's screwed. So now he's in the red. So now he's having the corner in the red. And it's just like he's not flowing. And then he either pops or he stays there the rest of the race. And he's like, for him, it's like crit racing is the coolest thing ever. But it was also like he was on the fear of death the whole time. For me and Luke, like we aren't we aren't fearful, or we're not really fearful at all, but like we're not like, oh shit, you gotta be locked in until that final like 5 minutes or so of the race. And if you're
Yeah.
that mentally fresh by the end, then you can do what we did this year.
Now, would you say for infiltrating the rainstorm lead out train, do you think there's a part of it for yourself? Because you've built up a reputation where they know, okay, we know Lucas, as opposed to someone being in that peloton that no one knows. You think there's a little bit more respect that they give you?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, respect is earned at the top, right? Like, and I had to break. I had to earn that respect, right? And it came with the wins. It came with being maybe a little bit overly aggressive and overly ballsy at points to where like I got some of them in my face after the race and stuff. And it's not like they're not really mad about it. It's just like, like it's just a part of the camaraderie, it's a part of the racing, right? But
Yeah.
like you have to establish that like you're there, you're a presence, and now I have their respect. And so now they know it's like, okay, if we're coming in and we're doing X, like we're gonna do it cleanly, and then we're gonna have a good sprint after. Like, if I come in and I slice in, usually I'm giving them the wheel back to then fade through to just keep the momentum going, right? Like they
Mm.
all know it's just we're all trying to, and crazy enough, we're all trying to work together a little bit up in that front spot because we all want to stay there. And if we're all trying to fight each other the whole time, you make it a lot harder for us to all stay there. And then we get bum rushed up the left side by God knows who. And then it's really bad for all of us.
Yeah.
Or we can just kind of, move in, move out. And then some of it's you got to do some ballsy shit. Like I did some ballsy shit to get in, to come under in the second to last turn, like a few times this year, right? Like Lake Bluff at the second to last ACC race, the last ACC race. That's what I would do is like you come in, you pick a corner, and you're just like, I'm coming in. I'm getting in the train. I'm coming in, brother. Good luck, everyone else.
They're like, oh
Like
shoot,
there's a little
Lucas
bit
is
of that.
here.
Yeah, they're like, you just see me, and you see my eyes are big, so your eyes should be real big because I'm like, and it's no, but like there's definitely a respect and a camaraderie, and like I think it goes for across the board. Like guys like Clever, guys like Ties and Justins and the Gomez's and the Fredos. People have different styles in crit racing, and you'll find it by talking to all these different racers. Like what makes Rainstorm is they're crazy, bro. They're crazy. They'll execute you on site if you try to get in their
He
chain,
said
right?
on site.
And on site, you're gone. You're gone. And that's how when Legion was dominated too. Same thing. When you get in their train on site, you're getting executed, right? And so like you got to earn your stripes. You got to earn your respect. You got to like you got to make mistakes to learn how to do it properly. Like I'm not going to say I like there's a reason they were getting we were jawing off to each other after races and stuff because I did make some mistakes, but I had to do that to learn how do I do it properly, right? And so
Mm,
that's why none of them are going to hold it. None of them are going to hold it again because at the end of the day, like no one was getting hurt, everyone was okay, and because we hold that highest standards of you need to we're here to win races, but injuring another rider to win a race isn't the like that's not the respect amongst competitors, right? There's still that respect at the end of the day, and there has to be a proper way to do it. And I feel like I've still got a lot to learn, but I'm learning quite a bit. I learned quite a bit this last year, and it'll just keep elevating my game further and further.
yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
Mhm.
Any final things you would like to mention or plug in as we wrap this up?
Yeah. Shout out George.
Shout
Shout
out
out
to
Sky Sports.
shout out to SKYA Sports.
Shout out to Velo. Shout out Declan. No,
Shout out
no,
to
no,
Declan.
no. Shout out to Declan. That's my dog. No, it was truly. I'll leave it with this. It was truly a blessed year. We had a lot of good fortune, and a lot of it came off of our relentless drive to work very hard and achieve at the highest level. It came from a lot of constant support from friends and families and mentors. And it came from a lot of new faces this season that gave us the extra edge of people like, getting to meet people like, you on the sidelines and stuff who because we weren't afraid to put ourselves out there and give you an inside look to our lives. We were connecting more with people this season than ever before. And because we were having fun doing it and we were being, I hope, the kind stewards of the sport that are a little bit crazy sometimes, that made it entertaining and exciting. We got to meet a lot of new faces and whatnot, and I'm thankful to all the people that we met along the way, everyone that cheered for us, and I think it was because of them. It's why we love to do what we do, and it's why we had a excellent 2024, and we're dreaming of a bigger 2025, and we're excited to see all those faces and do even crazier things next year. That's gonna turn some heads in even more fun and exciting ways. So Yeah, blessed 2024 because of everyone, and here's to 2025 being even better.
Hashtag blessed 2025. Yeah, I'm
Blessed
certain
2025.
that we'll run into each other. I'm hoping I was trying to do this with Will, but when you guys are back in Chicago, maybe try to set up something where maybe like your morning kind of shakeout rides, maybe try to get together,
Absolutely.
try to get some of the elite guys from our squad just to kind of, just to kind of chit chat before you guys
Yeah.
go to war in that evening
Yep.
time. But yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
for myself, and I know obviously it's apparent with all your followers that you guys have that the vibes is so important in this sport, and I'm just so happy that the time I came into the sport, seeing people express their personalities on social media or in person, like it has helped me a lot, even for what I do. And so that's kind of one of my advice I've been kind of pushing on some of the athletes on my club is, hey, you can get the podiums, you're strong. We see you show up to all the local rides and stuff, but the personality is what's going to take you to the next level because that's really what people want to see.
Right.
Anyone can ride a bike, but
Right.
when they get insight into who you are, like it's
Right.
just takes off from there. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, absolutely. You can't forget that. I mean, in the other big sports, that's why people love other big sports because they have their personalities told for them because the sport's so big. But in our sport, it's not quite at that point, so you have to be willing to tell your own personality story, right? And if you do in this space, it always pays off, right? Because so few people are willing to do it. So don't be afraid to take a risk, find a shtick, grab a cowboy hat, grab a Texas goddamn
Oh.
American belt,
Bro, I should have worn my
and
cowboy boots, man. I should have put them on for you just for this.
dude, I got some new cowboy boots for Christmas. They're so sick. I'm gonna be wearing them out to all next year's race attire is cowboy boots, jeans, and wife beaters only at
He
races.
said
That's
wife
the
beaters, yeah.
only the, what, not wife the
No,
string
I
strap
know what
shirts.
you
That's
mean.
what we
Yeah,
call them. No, everyone's gonna say everyone knows, but that's the formal suit of attire to crit all next season. So
let's go. I want to
no,
see
it's
it.
let's do it. Absolutely, absolutely. It's good. Oh, and a cowboy hat
Got to
to
get the
top it
cowboy
all off.
hat. Yeah.
Gotta
And
get the
then if
cowboy hat.
would you like to give all your socials as we close, just if you want to spell out? I'll put it on the screen, of
Yeah,
course, but feel free to plug
yeah.
your.
You can absolutely. You can find us on YouTube at Crit Shit. I don't know if it's a dot or an underscore, but you'll find it off that. We don't have as much stuff on there yet. We're developing a cohesive plan for 2025 so that you can see all the insides. You can follow me along on my Instagram at Lucas underscore Bourgoyne. And yeah, Luke, you follow along on Luke's stuff as well. His stuff's really cool. He's the one that honestly does a lot of our editing, and it goes silently unrecognized just because no one knows the editor. But he is the goofy guy who adds all the goofy little edits and
Shout out to
little
Luke.
awesome things to it that make shout out to Luke that make them so unique and yeah, he brings the level balance to my personality that we need to have something super special and and continue to grow. So yeah, Lucas underscore Burgoyne. Luke is like Luke Fetzer or something, and those are both on Instagram and Crit Shit on YouTube and on Instagram as well. And yeah, keep following the story, and we hope to do more exciting things in 2025.
Well, thank you so much, Lucas, for joining, taking time out of your busy schedule to be here for the show or the podcast, whatever I'm going to call it. I don't know. But for the audience at home, if you've tuned in this far, thank you so much for your support, and we wish both Luke's and whatever your endeavors is going to be for 2025. But we're looking forward to seeing you out there, and of course, we'll be linking up again in Chicago. Yo, what's going on? Yeah, I'm tripping narratives.
Sick, dude. I
Yeah,
can get
man.
the I can get it to do the I figured
Yeah.
out the hacks on this show. So yeah, man.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having me on. I really appreciate it. And yeah,
Yeah, man. Good luck out there, and we'll touch base soon.
sounds good, Patrick.
See
See
you,
you later,
bro.
man.
Take care, Lucas.